Welcome to the Coven Chat.
Thank you for joining me here at the Maiden Circle Coven Chat podcast, where we talk all things witchy, spiritual, and human.
Hello, merry meet, and welcome. Today we are talking about one of my favorite subjects, tarot. Here at the Coven Chat, we cap off every episode with a divination session, and in most of those sessions I am using either tarot cards or oracle cards, or a mixture of the two. It is actually one of my favorite things to do for this podcast and in general ever since I took up the practice. There won't be an interview today, but I am hoping to do another episode on the general subject of divination with a guest. But for now, you're stuck with me. So as usual, we'll have our pagan fun fact. I'll give you a bit of my thoughts on the tarot and talk a bit about my own journey, and then we'll have our usual divination session. I hope you stick around for it. I wanted to share something with you today. I've been doing readings from other writers, some of my favorite poets, but I wanted to share something with you that I wrote. Every now and then, I find the inspiration to write a poem or a song, something a little different from the general fiction that I do. And once or twice, I have come up with songs directly based on a tarot card or inspired by a tarot card. I'm going to read to you one of my songs as though it was a poem, because I don't feel like singing, but I do hope someday I'll be able to bring it to you in musical format. I'm not a musician. I do write lyrics and melody, but there aren't really very many instruments that I've even had a chance to attempt to play, and there are none I would say I'm proficient with. So this is my song read as a poem called 8 of Swords. I do hope you enjoy it. Help me find my way around this cage. I locked myself in. These bars and blades, my chosen prison. Help me out, the crystal ball says I should be free. Call upon your friends to save the day. Will they come running from far away? What would they say? Help me out, the crystal tower is tumbling down. The shuffling of the cards, where will you go? You're at a crossroads, these blades and stones. Too many choices. You're on your own. Surrender now, your chains unbound. It's time to move on. I'll help you find your way out of the cage you locked yourself in. Those bars and blades you just imagined. You built this cage. It's time to break the walls you made. Your chariot awaits. You're free now, out of your cage. You're free now. From blades of 8, you're free now. You will escape. You're free now, out of your cage. You're free now. From blades of 8. So that was 8 of Swords, and I hope you liked it. Thank you.
Pagan fun fact. Here's your fun facts now.
The tarot is a popular tool amongst the spiritual community, and we'll talk a bit about where it comes from in our episode, but it's found its home in the spiritual, pagan, witchy community. When you bring it up, most people connect it to witchcraft, even though nowadays it has been used in the Christian religion, and Christian witchcraft has become a larger practice. It's still mostly connected to pagan witchcraft, non-Abrahamic witchcraft. In that way, it is a bit limited as a tool. However, there are many tools and symbols and ideas that actually extend across religions. One of those tools is the Hamza symbol. I've been coming across the Hamza for the last couple of days, and it seems to really want my attention, so I thought I'd talk about it in our pagan fun fact. Some of the oldest uses of the Hamza can be traced all the way back to Mesopotamia, one of our first human civilizations, and since then it has been found all around the globe in communities that had no connection to one another. Before we had internet or even boat travel, these communities had this 5-fingered hand and eye symbol. The Hamza, if you don't know, is a symbol of 5 fingers that is symmetrical, so both the thumb and pinky are the same size, the forefinger and pointer finger are the same size, and the middle finger stands above it all. In the center of the hand is an eye, something I've heard called an all-seeing eye, or the Eye of Osiris, or the Eye of Horus, and its purpose is generally known to give the wearer or user protection against the evil eye or against curses or negative energy. According to ishka.com, in the Jewish faith, the Hamza represents the hand of God and is known as the hand of Miriam. Hamza is apparently also the Hebrew word for the number 5, which could represent a few different things like the 5 fingers on the talisman, or even the 5 books of the Torah: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Of course, the hand is also mentioned in the Christian Bible. It is also mentioned in Muslim culture and is called the hand of Fatima, the daughter of a prophet. And so the hand represents protection and power and strength. The hand also appears in Buddhism and Hinduism, but it has a less religious connotation and it is more connected to the spiritual aspects of the chakras. I'm only in the beginning of my study of this beautiful symbol. I have found myself drawn to it lately and I'm deeply intrigued by it. I encourage you to look more into it. The more I learn about it, maybe I'll come later and share it with you. Until then, absolutely check out ishka.com. I am not an authority on this thing, but they seem to have a good grasp on it. And look up anything else you can find about the Hamza. Maybe it'll do some good for you, as I feel like it's already doing some good for me. So, tarot. What the heck is it? Obviously, it's a card game. I suppose we should talk a bit about where tarot comes from. It has been around since around the 1400s or mid-1400s, 1440s, 1450s-ish, and it originated somewhere in Italy. In its earliest forms, tarot was a game. It had nothing to do with the way we use it nowadays, and it didn't really even look the way we use it nowadays. In fact, some of the earlier forms of tarot didn't have any of the major arcana cards. They were only the minor cards. So essentially, you had a suit of cups, swords, coins, and wands or staffs, and you had cards 1 through 10 representing them. In some suits, you also had the face cards, the page, the knight, the king, and queen. They were essentially the same as our modern playing cards today. And in fact, many readers use playing cards the same way they would tarot cards, or use them in conjunction with tarot cards. Over time, many artists would add new face cards, new trump cards, almost as if making the deck signature to them. And because they were these one-of-a-kind or hand-painted decks, the only people who really had access to the tarot were rich people. Eventually, though, it did become more accessible and tarot began to spread across Europe. And then sometime well into the late 18th century, it became associated with the occult. It spread around the world and made its way to the United States of America. And during the rebirth of magic, so to speak, in the 1960s, it became a staple in the occult practice. And so here we are today. I got my first tarot deck in high school. In my junior year, I attended a residential school in Mississippi. And surprisingly, even though it was a STEM school, a math and science school, it was full of spiritual and artsy people. Musicians, painters, creators of all sorts, and a heck of a lot of Wiccans. This may surprise you, but Mississippi is full of Wiccans. Back then, I had already been practicing about 5 or 6 years, but I was only on a solo path. I hardly worked with any groups at that point. In fact, thinking about it now, I don't think I worked with any at all at that point. I don't think I met my group in Chicago until college. So I believe I had just been solo up until that point. And then I met a bunch of Wiccans and was invited to events, invited to rituals, invited to retreats. And I experienced the wonder of group ritual, which we'll talk about in another episode. But while there at that school, I met a friend who one day handed me a deck of cards. They handed me the Tarot of the Witches deck, which I still have to this day. I did not learn how to read tarot in high school. In fact, for years I only used the deck for spells. I would use the cards as signifiers in different spells I was doing, but I didn't actually know how to interpret the deck. I didn't connect with it mentally. I tried quite a few times, but I would give up when I would feel that it was just too much. Reading the books seemed like too much. Spending time with the cards seemed like too much. Then sometime around 2016, I decided to try again. And I pulled out the deck and I would read one card a day. I'd look in the book, see what the card means. I'd look at the pictures, figure out what the colors on it meant to me, how I associated certain images, and just spent time with one card each day. And then another friend bought me my Gilded Tarot deck, which is the main deck that I use in 90% of my readings now. Something about that deck just clicked for me, and maybe practicing with the other deck helped, but something about the imagery, the colors, just the story that that deck tells to me really clicked, and I haven't looked back. In fact, since having that deck, I've now got a whole bunch more. Last I counted, I had 10, but I think I've gotten a couple more since then. I decided not to count because it seemed like if I didn't think about the number, I wouldn't feel like I've become a crazy card collector. Some of the decks were gifted to me. Some I purchased on my own. And I use most of them sparingly. As I said, the Gilded Tarot is my number one go-to, but I also use the Everyday Witch Tarot a lot now, and I have the Soul Rebel Oracle deck. So reading tarot has expanded into reading Oracle, which expanded into using a pendulum board more frequently, and using runes. I pull runes for myself when the urge calls, but tarot will always be my number one go-to. So we went from receiving a deck in high school to using it as a spell tool to practicing it with it every day to receiving a deck that still resonates with me years later to having a whole collection of decks. Then I had to figure out the next step, or I was drawn to create the next step. I was pulled to it. It wasn't even something that I consciously did. I just felt called to do the next thing, and that was to design my own decks. I started with Oracle decks because I was already channeling the messages. It simply, again, felt like something I was called to do, and I started writing down these messages, and I started thinking, okay, well, there's some format for me to share these messages in, and it just played out as Oracle deck. So I started with the Soul Healing Oracle because I think I was in a place where I needed soul healing, and that's just kind of how the messages felt, like they could help people get more in touch with their own souls and find growth and healing through whatever messages come through. Because ultimately, card divination is a meditation and a mirror. It is a reflection of what's going on in our own psyches. It's a reflection of what our soul is already experiencing. Less telling the future and more telling what is and the path that we are currently taking. So then we had the Whole Heart Oracle and the Sensual Soul Oracle, and finally the Silhouetted Sight Tarot. And I used what I had available to me to make these decks, although I would love to have a hand-painted deck, one that is so unique and so beautifully designed that it blows my other decks out of the water. But I'm actually quite fond of the format that I use. It's very clear, and the images show what they need to show. It's also just a lot of fun working with the program that I work with. So I know that the decks that I have now are not my last decks. Because tarot does reflect what's in our minds so well, it makes creating a deck that much more interesting. If you are ever inclined to create a tarot deck for any reason, it is a fantastic art form, and it's a wonderful meditation on ourselves and our own growth. If we think about the journey of the tarot from Fool to Sun, from taking a leap of faith to ultimate fulfillment, it's something most of us want. And so if we can look at the story of the tarot as almost a guideline for our own journey to use as snapshots for different moments in our lives, I think it will open us up to a lot of answers to a lot of questions that we've had our whole existence. I know it has for me. There were times when I had decisions to make, or I wanted something really badly, but I wasn't sure if it was right for me. And I would look at the tarot, or I'd have someone else give me a reading, and the way my mind responds to the story the tarot tells me what I truly want, what I truly desire, what option actually fits me the best. And if I take that option, what outcomes are most likely to occur? Reading the tarot and creating the tarot are very different activities, and they both tap into different aspects of the mind, just as reading a book and writing a book might require different resources from the mind. I absolutely love that the tarot can be used in magic. It can be used for divination. It can be used for psychological study or self-study, and it can just be art. I've even been inspired by the tarot to create music and drawings and paintings that are never going to be seen by anyone but me and maybe a few friends who come into my home or those who follow me on Instagram if I post it. I can truly say it's made a huge difference in my life, learning the tarot and engaging with the tarot. It's a beautiful practice. And if you've ever been inclined to pursue it or look into it, I absolutely recommend that you do. There's nothing to fear with the tarot. There's nothing spooky about it. There's nothing evil or dark about it. Just like the Hamza or the five-pointed star, I think the tarot is something that people of all faiths can find something out of, can get something out of. Of course, that's just my opinion, and I can't tell anyone what to do, but I do think that if we opened our minds to all the tools that the divine has offered to us in understanding ourselves and understanding our world, we would have better connections, we would have better experiences, we would feel more calm throughout our day-to-day lives because we would be more aware of what's going on inside of us, and we might even have a better understanding of those who we come into contact with. Most of the practices that I take up in my life are geared towards trying to create a life that not only feels good for me, but somehow adds to the life of others. Maybe not everyone I come into contact with, because we do have people who would take advantage of that, but I do try to do my best in living as not only an individual, but as a member of a community, of a society. And I think anything that we do that can help us understand ourselves better and understand human psychology better and be more empathetic with one another is going to help society. We all want to live in a world that is healthy, or most of us do. And I do think that tarot is a tool that can help achieve that. Of course, there must be balance. There are many people out there who become obsessed with the tarot, who use it to tell them exactly how they're supposed to live their lives or try to use it. They become reliant on it, and that isn't healthy either. There has to be a balance. Tarot, like a hammer or a screwdriver, is a tool. If you use that tool wisely, you can build something beautiful. I guess that's all I've got to say today. Let's move on to our reading. We have reached the tarot reading section of our episode, and funnily enough, I recorded everything up until this point some days back earlier in the week, and there was an event that I was going to on Friday that ended up with me having 2 fewer decks than I had the last time I spoke in this very episode, and having a Hamza, a surprise sort of Hamza that my friend made. So I guess I hadn't realized that this was something she offered, or even if I had, it really has only been showing up in maybe the last week or 2 of my life, and so I haven't had a strong interest in it before now. And then I did the earlier part of this episode, I did the fun fact, and that was just sort of on a whim. I was looking for something that was sort of related, but not exactly what we'd be talking about in the episode, because I always want our fun facts to be something interesting. And so I just think it's really magical that I came across her Hamzas, and I had barely even noticed them throughout the night. Towards the end of the event, when everyone was getting ready to go home, I realized that I was like sitting there playing with one, like I had it in my hand and I was just fiddling with it, and I wasn't thinking about it, and I was like, wait a minute, this is a Hamza. The thing I was just talking about the other day in this week's podcast, this thing that I have been strangely drawn to, and I didn't even notice it all night long, but now I'm playing with it in my hands and just sort of toying around. So now I have one on my altar, and I'm very thrilled to have it. Check out my Instagram if you would like to see pictures from this event. Something else also happened on Friday. I knew I was going to be giving away the tarot deck that I designed, my silhouetted sight deck, but I realized that I had a deck that I hadn't been using, but I was so called to buy some time ago. And on Friday, I woke up thinking that has to go to her. It has to go to Sabrina, who we've had on this show, Sabrina Sahara. And so I ended up giving her that deck in its original packaging because I barely used it, and it's really a beautiful deck and it needs to be used. And the Orisha just so happened to be something she is very connected with. So I knew I had to have it years ago, and I knew it was for her. And all of that happened sort of in between the beginning of this episode and this section. And I just find that really beautiful and inspiring, and it brings me a lot of joy. I'm very blessed. Thank you for listening to that little tidbit. Let's go ahead and start our tarot reading. I'm calling upon my higher self and the higher self of all those who are drawn to this reading. I'm calling upon the Mother and Father, Lord and Lady, God and Goddess, our angels, our ancestors, our spiritual guides, our passed on loved ones, our living loved ones, all of those who want the absolute best for us, and especially those who want the absolute best and highest good for whoever is tuning in and resonating with this reading right now. What is our message for the week? What is our message for this coming 7 days, for this next week? Please and thank you. What is our message for this coming 7 days, for this next week? Please and thank you. We have the Fool, we have the King of Pentacles and the Page of Pentacles that came out kind of stuck together. A new beginning with money or career. It could be some of you are coming into contact with a King of Pentacles type of person. It could be that you're that King of Pentacles, and of course gender is not a factor. Take what resonates and leave what doesn't. We have the Ten of Wands, the Queen of Swords, and that seems to be all that wants to come out this time. I don't know why I shuffled in between. I don't usually do that, but it just felt right. I think this King energy is actually coming after this Ten of Wands energy. I think the Ten of Wands and Queen of Swords is saying, okay, well, your burdens are coming to an end. You have thought through your steps. You've made a plan of some sort with this Queen of Swords. You've really made clear your desire, and you've actually come to some sort of roadmap. You've created some sort of plan, and that's going to lead you to this King of Pentacles, Page of Pentacles energy. With the Fool, I think it's essentially saying you now have to enact that plan, put your ideas into motion, because as soon as you do, you're going to find yourself with something very beautiful. The King of Pentacles does have a sort of a message of being aware of your surroundings, because the image on the king is he's in his throne, and he's got all this gold and green and lusciousness around him, but he's looking off into space. He's not actually looking at the beauty of what is available to him now. So be very careful when you take this step that you don't get too in over your head, that you don't start dreaming and fantasizing about all the what ifs and what could be, and that you try to be very grounded here. This Page of Pentacles is also saying to make sure to keep your ego grounded. Again, don't get too in over your head. Don't start thinking about space travel when the real work is right here on Earth. Make a plan for your highest good based in the reality. You know, you put in all this work. You don't want to self-sabotage it by making it bigger than it has to be. And I don't mean not to dream big. I mean about your process, your steps, the things you have to do. You know, sometimes we say, okay, I want to open a restaurant. I don't know why that came through, but I want to open a restaurant. So I want it to be this 5-star restaurant with the most amazing chefs and all this stuff. But you're just starting out. So why not start with a sandwich? And actually, I have a family member who did something like this, start with a sandwich cart and maybe a food truck and then build up. It doesn't have to be all at once, and you don't have to do the huge, big thing. You can keep that as a dream, but try to break it down into steps so that you're not getting overwhelmed and so that you're not off in the clouds daydreaming about what can be, and you're feeling more grounded and more grateful in what is. This King of Pentacles comes before the Page of Pentacles in this spread, and I'm just feeling like the page is a lot more grounded in this image. There's even more browns and more plant life, and there's the peacock, which is this beautiful, majestic creature, but it's also about ego. So I think it's about keeping your ego in check, making sure you stay grounded, and that you trust that you're on the right path without getting lost in the weeds. And then for some of us, if there is a new person coming into your life, make sure to establish a healthy friendship. Even if you want it to be a romantic connection, make sure that you have a friendship. I'm just looking at these yellow feathers on this page, and these flowers that are yellow in the center and pink on the edges. So even if it's a love connection, there should be friendship at the core. There should be real, true camaraderie at the core of any connections that you allow into your life, and these may even help you on this journey. So that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for listening. Blessed be. So that's our show. Thank you so much for joining me. I absolutely recommend that you check out Story Maps for a comprehensive look through the history of tarot, and check out the Maiden Circle Udemy course, Maiden Circle Wicca for Newbies. So just search Wicca for Newbies and you should find it. It is mostly about Wicca, but I do give a introduction to how I read tarot. And if you like my readings and would like to try your hand at it, I would highly recommend you check out the whole course, because it does help you connect with your intuition. And by whole course, I do mean the 4 classes that are currently available on Udemy. We have Wicca for Newbies, Getting to Know the Goddess, A History of Witches, and the Magic of Ritual. They are meant to be combined, and I do think you'll find a really deep connection with your inner divinity by taking these classes. And of course, if you would like to purchase the Silhouetted Sight Tarot deck or any of my Oracle decks for yourself, you can find those on Etsy at etsy.com/shop/Maiden's Playground. And you can find all of our links and anything you need from Maiden Circle at linktr.ee/MCCA13. Reach out if you're a witchy spiritual person and you'd like to chat about it. And thank you so much again for listening. I look forward to sharing the next episode with you. Until then, I send you so much love and so many blessings. Bye now.